The distress signal from New Haven arrived, fragmented and desperate. Communication Officer Sarah Chan sat frozen at her console aboard the orbital station above Earth, her hands trembling as she tried to clean up the transmission. Static filled most of the audio, but certain words cut through with horrible clarity. Under attack, civilian casualties, requesting immediate assistance, and finally, silence. New Haven had been humanity's proudest achievement in the outer colonies. Situated on a lush world in the Kepler system, it housed 3 million souls, farmers and scientists and children who had never seen Earth. They grew food that fed a dozen other settlements. They published research that advanced human knowledge. They were peaceful people who had traveled 40 light years to build something beautiful. Admiral Marcus Webb received the news in his office at Fleet Command. He was a tall man with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. When the junior officer delivered the initial report, Webb's face remained impassive. But those who knew him well noticed. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Tell me," he said quietly. The junior officer swallowed hard. "Sir, we've lost all contact with New Haven. The last transmission indicated an orbital bombardment in progress. Multiple capital ships of unknown origin. They targeted population centers first." Webb stood slowly, walking to the window that overlooked Earth's blue curve. His reflection stared back at him, and for a moment he looked every one of his 63 years. "Survivors?" "Unknown, sir. The attack began 4 hours ago. By the time the light-speed transmission reached us, it was already—" The officer couldn't finish. "Already over," Webb completed. He turned back, and now his eyes blazed with something fierce and controlled. "Get me the Security Council. Full emergency session. I want every fleet commander on a secure channel within the hour." The officer hesitated. "Sir, shouldn't we send a scout ship first?" "Verify the situation before." "Before what, Lieutenant?" "Before we respond to the massacre of 3 million human beings?" Webb's voice remained level, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. "We already know what happened. The question isn't whether we respond. The question is how." Within 6 hours, the United Earth Security Council convened in their fortified chamber beneath Geneva. Holographic representatives from Mars, Europa, and the asteroid settlements materialized around the circular table. The chamber, designed to project calm authority, now crackled with barely contained rage. Ambassador Kenji Yamamoto from Mars spoke first, his normally diplomatic tone strained. "We need confirmation. We need evidence before we commit to military action that could what?" Interrupted Senator Patricia Morrison from the Belt Settlements. Her weathered face filled the holographic projection, eyes red from crying. "My granddaughter lived on New Haven. My granddaughter who was 8 years old and loved collecting rocks. What evidence do you need? The colony is gone." Webb stood, and the room fell silent. He had that effect on people. "We have evidence," he said, activating the central display. 37 minutes ago, our deep space monitoring network picked up residual thermal signatures in the Kepler system. The energy readings are consistent with plasma bombardment on a planetary scale. Additionally, we detected the hyperspace wakes of 17 heavy cruisers departing the system. The holographic display showed a 3-dimensional tactical map. Red markers indicated the attacking vessels. Their trajectory arrows, pointing toward a region of space humanity had barely explored. Webb continued. "Signal analysis suggests the attackers are from the Gentari Collective, a spacefaring species we've had minimal contact with. They apparently decided New Haven represented a territorial intrusion." "Territorial?" Ambassador Yamamoto leaned forward. "We've been on New Haven for 23 years. They're claiming it now?" "They're not claiming anything," Webb replied coldly. "They're erasing our presence. There's a difference." President Elizabeth Okonkwo, attending in person from her secured bunker, stood at the head of the table. She was a small woman with a voice that commanded continents. "Admiral Webb, what are you recommending?" Webb met her gaze steadily. "Madame President, members of the Council, we are at a crossroads. For 2 centuries, humanity has expanded into space with the hope of peaceful coexistence. We've bent over backward to respect alien territories, to negotiate, to compromise. We've shown restraint even when provoked. But there must be a line. When someone murders 3 million civilians without warning, without demands, without mercy. That's the line." He manipulated the display, and suddenly the room filled with images of New Haven. Children playing in crystal blue lakes. Markets bustling with commerce. Research stations where scientists work to terraform neighboring worlds. Happy people building a future. "These were not soldiers," Webb continued, his voice dropping to something harder than steel. "These were families. And whoever did this needs to understand something fundamental about humanity. We remember. We mourn, and we answer." President Okonkwo studied the faces around the table. Fear and grief warred with something else, something older. Humanity had climbed from caves to starships, and along the way, they had learned that survival sometimes demanded terrible choices. "What's your operational proposal, Admiral?" She asked. Webb had been waiting for that question. He'd been preparing the answer since the first garbled transmission. "We mobilized the entire home fleet, every ship within 10 light years of Earth, every reserve squadron, every mothballed cruiser we can get operational. We assemble the largest military force in human history, and we make certain the Gentari understand exactly what they've done." "How many ships are we discussing?" asked Senator Morrison. Webb pulled up deployment rosters, and the numbers began scrolling across the display. Dreadnoughts and carriers, destroyers and frigates, supply vessels, and troop transports. The list seemed endless. "Current active fleet stands at 220,000 vessels, Webb stated. "We can bring another 150,000 out of reserve status within a month. We pull security detachments from the colonies. That's another 75,000. Add the corporate security fleets that have volunteered, the civilian militia conversions, and the new construction we accelerate from the orbital yards." He paused, letting the magnitude sink in. 500,000 warships, Madame President. The greatest armada ever assembled. We point it at the Gentari home worlds, and we deliver a message they will never forget. The chamber erupted in argument. Some voices urged caution. Others demanded immediate action. Ambassador Yamamoto warned of galactic war. Senator Morrison demanded justice for the dead. Through it all, President Okonkwo sat silent, her fingers steepled before her face. Finally, she raised one hand, and silence returned. "Admiral Webb, if we do this, we're changing everything. We're announcing to every species in the galaxy that humanity will not accept aggression against our people. We're making ourselves a power that demands respect. Or fear." "Yes, ma'am," Webb agreed. "We are. But the alternative is teaching the galaxy that humans are acceptable targets. That our colonies can be destroyed without consequence. That 3 million lives mean nothing." He leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. "I've spent 40 years in the fleet, Madame President. I've seen humans at their best and worst. But I know this. We take care of our own. That's not a weakness. It's what makes us worth defending." President Okonkwo closed her eyes briefly, the weight of history pressing down our shoulders. When she opened them again, her decision was made. "Authorization granted, Admiral. Mobilize the fleet. 500,000 warships. Show them what happens when they attack humanity." Webb saluted sharply. "Yes, Madame President. The Gentari will learn." As the council session ended and the holograms flickered out, Webb remained standing alone in the chamber. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the lights of Geneva, peaceful and bright. Soon, the orbital yards above would burn with constant construction. Soon, humanity's children would don uniforms and prepare for war. He thought of New Haven, of 3 million voices silenced forever. Then he thought of the 500,000 ships that would answer their final scream. The Jantari had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They had assumed humanity was soft, that spreading among the stars had made them weak. They would learn differently. The entire galaxy would. The mobilization began within hours of the Security Council's authorization. Across human space, from the gleaming orbital habitats of Earth to the ice mines of Europa, from the Martian shipyards to the asteroid belt's industrial complexes, the call went out. Humanity was going to war. Captain Jennifer Park received her orders while on shore leave in the lunar city. She'd been visiting her parents, trying to forget the stress of patrol duty along the frontier. The message came through on her military implant, marked Priority Alpha, and suddenly her leave was over. She kissed her mother goodbye, embraced her father, and caught the next shuttle to the Tycho military yards where her ship waited. The yards had transformed overnight. Vessels that had been in various states of repair now crawled with engineers working triple shifts. Retired officers who'd settled into civilian life found themselves recalled to duty. Military contractors who'd been building slow and steady suddenly had unlimited budgets and impossible deadlines. The message was clear. Everything humanity could spare was being thrown into this response. Park's vessel, the destroyer Relentless, had been scheduled for a 2-month overhaul. Now it would launch in 72 hours with whatever repairs could be completed in that time. As she walked through the corridors, she saw her crew arriving, their faces grim but determined. They knew what had happened at New Haven. Everyone did. The story had spread across every human settlement, faster than light itself. Images from New Haven's final moments, captured by automated satellites before they were destroyed, played on endless loop across news networks. Empty playgrounds with toys scattered in the dust. Markets reduced to rubble. Residential districts turned to glass by plasma fire. 3 million stories ended in a single brutal afternoon. Lieutenant Commander James Torres met Park in the ready room, his tactical display already active. "Captain, you've seen the fleet composition?" Park nodded, studying the holographic schematic that showed ships gathering from every corner of human space. The numbers were staggering. 500,000 vessels. "I didn't think we had that many." "We didn't," Torres replied. 70,000 are coming out of mothball storage. Ships that haven't flown in decades. Admiral Webb is authorizing emergency refits, anything to make them combat capable. Mars alone is contributing 80,000 vessels, including their entire commercial freight fleet retrofitted with weapons. Park whistled softly. Mars had always maintained a large merchant marine, but she'd never considered what those massive cargo haulers could do with military-grade railguns mounted on their hulls. "What's our assignment?" Torres pulled up a sector chart. "Third Fleet, Strike Group Vengeance. We're part of the Vanguard." He paused. "Captain, we're going to be among the first to engage." "Good," Park said simply. Her younger brother had married a botanist on New Haven. They'd sent her pictures of their wedding just 3 months ago, both of them smiling under alien stars. Now they were gone, vaporized or buried in the rubble. "Let's make sure we're ready." Across human space, similar conversations played out thousands of times. In the asteroid belt, mining ships were hastily equipped with kinetic weapons, their powerful drilling lasers repurposed for war. On Europa, the subsurface naval fleet that patrolled the moon's underground oceans was drained and prepped for space combat. Even Earth's atmospheric defense grid, designed to protect against meteors and orbital debris, was being reconfigured to provide covering fire for the departing armada. Admiral Webb coordinated it all from Fleet Command. His office transformed into a nerve center buzzing with activity. Holographic displays surrounded him, showing the gathering storm of ships. Each dot represented a vessel, and each vessel represented crew members who were volunteering for what might be a one-way mission. Commander Sarah Okafor, Webb's chief of staff, approached with the latest status report. Admiral, we're ahead of schedule. Current count is 412,000 vessels operational or near operational. The remaining 88,000 should be ready within the week. Webb studied the numbers with satisfaction. Logistics? That's the challenge, sir. We're looking at the largest supply chain in history. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, food, medical supplies. We're stripping every depot from here to Proxima Centauri. Corporate suppliers are working with us, but even with unlimited funding, physics is physics. We can't manufacture everything fast enough. Then prioritize, Webb ordered. Fuel and weapons first. We can resupply food and parts from captured enemy facilities if necessary. Okafor raised an eyebrow. You're confident we'll be capturing enemy facilities, sir? Webb's expression hardened. Commander, when we're finished, the Centauri won't have facilities left to capture. But yes, we'll need forward operating bases. The Kepler system itself, for one. We're taking it back. The strategy was audacious. While most military operations focused on careful, measured responses, Webb had proposed something unprecedented. A hammer blow so massive it would shatter any possibility of prolonged conflict. 500,000 ships would jump into Centauri space simultaneously, overwhelming their defenses before they could coordinate a response dot. It required perfect synchronization across hundreds of star systems. Ships from Earth needed to arrive at the same moment as ships from the frontier colonies, despite being scattered across dozens of light years. The computational challenges alone were staggering, requiring the combined processing power of every quantum computer in human space. Dr. Lisa Fernandez, Chief of Fleet Operations Research, worked those problems 18 hours a day. Her team had expanded from 30 specialists to over 5,000, all focused on coordinating the largest military movement in human history. The mathematics were brutal, accounting for relativistic effects, hyperspace variations, and the simple logistics of moving millions of personnel. We're talking about 0.001% margin of error, she explained to Webb during a briefing. If ships arrive even minutes apart, the Centauri could concentrate fire and destroy our forces piecemeal. So we don't arrive minutes apart, Webb replied calmly. What do you need to make this work? Fernandez highlighted sections of her tactical display. Real-time quantum communication networks linking every task force. Synchronized hyperspace generators on every vessel, all calibrated to the exact same frequency. And we need to account for gravitational variations along every jump route. She paused. Sir, this has never been attempted. The computational models are theoretical. Then we make them practical, Webb stated. Dr. Fernandez, 3 million people are dead because we weren't prepared. We're not making that mistake again. Make it work. She did. Over the next 3 weeks, as ships continued gathering at designated staging points, Fernandez's team performed a miracle of coordination. They mapped hyperspace routes with unprecedented precision. They synchronized ship systems across the entire fleet. They ran simulation after simulation until the margin of error dropped from 0.1% to 0.01% to 0.001%. Meanwhile, the ships kept coming. From the farthest reaches of human expansion, vessels answered the call. The colony ships that had carried humanity to distant stars now retrofitted for war. Luxury cruise liners converted to troop transports. Scientific research vessels equipped with experimental weapons. Even the massive generation ships, those hollowed-out asteroids that served as mobile habitats, contributed their defensive batteries. Captain Park watched from, relentless as her strike group assembled at the Mars staging area. Hundreds of ships hung in formation, their hulls painted with unit designations and kill marks. Many were veterans of pirate skirmishes or border disputes. None had seen anything like what was coming. Her communications officer rooted through an all-hands. Transmission from Admiral Webb. The old warrior's face appeared on every screen across the assembled fleet. His expression grave but determined. Officers and crew of the United Earth Fleets, Webb began. In 72 hours, we jump to Gentari space. We carry with us the memories of 3 million souls who were murdered without warning or mercy. We carry the determination of every human who refuses to accept that our people are acceptable targets. And we carry the largest military force ever assembled by our species. He paused, letting his words sink in across hundreds of thousands of ships. The Gentari attacked New Haven because they believed humanity was weak. They believed our peaceful expansion meant we lacked the will to defend ourselves. They believed wrong. When we arrive in their space, they will learn that humanity remembers its dead. They will learn that we protect our own. And they will learn that there are consequences for attacking innocent people. Webb's eyes seemed to look directly at every person watching. This will not be easy. Some of us will not return home. But we go forward anyway, because that's what humans do. We stand up to bullies. We defend the defenseless. We make certain that evil actions have evil consequences. New Haven's children deserve no less. The transmission ended, but its impact rippled through the fleet. In crew quarters and ready rooms, in engine compartments and weapon bays, humanity's warriors prepared themselves for what was coming. They checked equipment and wrote letters home. They trained and drilled and made peace with their decisions. The jump coordinates locked at exactly 060 hours universal, standard time, across 500,000 vessels scattered through dozens of staging areas. Hyperspace generators hummed to life in perfect synchronization. Years of careful engineering and weeks of frantic preparation came down to a single moment. Either the fleet would arrive together, or humanity's grandest military operation would collapse into chaos. Captain Park felt the familiar lurch in her stomach as Relentless entered hyperspace. The view screen showed the characteristic blue-white shimmer of faster-than-light travel, but her attention fixed on the tactical display. Green dots represented friendly vessels, all following precise jump vectors calculated by Dr. Fernandez's team. Thousands of ships from her staging area alone, all aimed at the same destination. Jump stable, reported her navigator. All systems nominal. Estimated arrival in Gentari space, 47 minutes. Park nodded, forcing herself to breathe normally. 47 minutes until they discovered whether Webb's audacious plan would work. 47 minutes until they learned if the Gentari were prepared for what was coming. She'd fought pirates and smugglers during her career, brief skirmishes that ended quickly. This was different. This was war against a species that had demonstrated the capacity for genocide. In the crew quarters below, Marines checked their combat armor for the 100th time. Relentless carried 300 soldiers, ready to board enemy vessels or establish planetary beachheads. Sergeant Marcus Chun, a veteran of the Jupiter militia, walked among his troops, offering quiet words of encouragement. Most were young, barely 20 years old, volunteers who'd signed up after seeing footage from New Haven. "Listen up," Chun called out, his voice cutting through the nervous chatter. "Some of you are scared. That's good. Means you're smart enough to understand what we're doing. But remember why we're here. Remember those kids who died on New Haven. Remember they never got a chance to fight back. We're giving them that chance now. We're their voice, their fists, their justice. You understand?" A chorus of affirmatives rang back. Sean nodded, satisfied. His own daughter had been 6 years old when she died on New Haven. She'd loved drawing pictures of the alien flowers that grew near their home. He kept her last drawing in his armor's sealed pocket, a splash of colors that represented everything the Jantari had destroyed. Aboard the dreadnought Indomitable, flagship of the entire operation, Admiral Webb monitored status reports from across the fleet. His tactical center displayed an overwhelming amount of data, processed by artificial intelligence systems working at their absolute limits. So far, everything proceeded according to plan. Ships were maintaining formation. Jump vectors remained synchronized. No critical system failures had been reported. Commander Okafor stood at his shoulder. "Admiral, we're receiving preliminary scans from our advance probes." They jumped ahead to provide early warning. Webb studied the incoming data. The probes had entered Jantari space minutes earlier, their stealth systems allowing them to observe without detection. What they revealed made his blood run cold with controlled fury. The Jantari weren't just a military threat. They were an empire built on conquest and subjugation. The probe scans showed dozens of worlds bearing the scars of orbital bombardment, their populations either destroyed or enslaved. New Haven wasn't an isolated incident. It was standard practice for the Jantari when encountering species they deemed inferior. "How many worlds?" Webb asked quietly. "At least 47 in their immediate sphere of influence," Okafor replied. "Most show signs of recent bombardment." "Sir, they've been doing this for decades." "Maybe longer." Webb's jaw tightened. Humanity had walked into a galaxy more dangerous than they'd imagined, and the Jantari had mistaken human caution for weakness. That miscalculation was about to cost them everything. "Update all task force commanders," Webb ordered. "Make sure they understand what they're seeing. This isn't just about New Haven anymore. We're stopping a genocidal empire." The message rippled through the fleet, hardening resolve that was already iron hard. Crews that might have felt doubt about the massive military response understood the stakes. They weren't starting a war. They were ending one, a war the Jantari had been waging against peaceful species for generations. "Captain," Park received the update with grim satisfaction. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Sato, pulled up the detailed scans. "Captain, look at this. The Jantari home system has orbital shipyards larger than anything we've built. Their fleet might number in the hundreds of thousands." "Might have," Park corrected. "But they're not concentrated. Their ships are scattered across their empire, maintaining control of all those subjugated worlds. We're hitting their home system with overwhelming force. They won't have time to recall their fleets." Sato looked uncertain. "And if they do? If they somehow knew we were coming?" Park met his gaze steadily. "Then we fight anyway. Lieutenant, I lost family on New Haven. So did half this crew. The Jantari could have their entire navy waiting, and we'd still go in. Some things are worth dying for." The final minutes of the jump crawled by. In 500,000 vessels, millions of humans prepared for combat. Weapons systems powered up, shields calibrated. Damage control teams stood ready. Fighter pilots strapped into their cockpits. Marines loaded their rifles. Engineers ensured power flow to critical systems. Captain Jessica Ramirez, commanding the carrier Steadfast, walked through her launch bays one final time. 300 fighters sat ready, their pilots already aboard. She'd served in the fleet for 23 years, rising through the ranks by reputation rather than politics. Her crew loved her because she demanded excellence, but never asked anything of them she wouldn't do herself. "Air Wing Commanders." "Final check," she ordered over the tactical net. Responses came back crisp and professional. "Alpha Squadron ready. Beta Squadron ready." The list continued until all 12 squadrons confirmed combat readiness. 300 fighters that would launch the moment Steadfast dropped from hyperspace. screening the larger vessels and striking at enemy formations. Admiral Webb sends his regards. Her communications officer reported. Message reads, "Remember New Haven? Make them pay?" Ramirez smiled coldly. "Tell the Admiral we'll do exactly that." And then some. The countdown reached its final seconds. Across the fleet, human hearts beat faster as officers called out the remaining time. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. 500,000 ships dropped from hyperspace simultaneously, emerging in Gentari space in a maneuver that would be studied by military tacticians for centuries. The coordination was perfect, the timing flawless. One moment the Gentari home system was peaceful, their orbital defenses monitoring routine traffic. The next moment, a human armada materialized that eclipsed any military force in galactic history. The effect on Gentari sensors was catastrophic. Their detection systems, designed to track hundreds of contacts at most, suddenly registered hundreds of thousands. Alarms shrieked across military installations. Defense stations scrambled to respond. Gentari commanders stared at their displays in disbelief, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Admiral Webb wasted no time on speeches or demands. The moment Indomitable's weapons locked onto target, he gave the order that could echo through history. All ships fire at will. Show no mercy. They gave none to New Haven. The human fleet opened fire as one, and space itself seemed to burn. Plasma cannons and railguns and missile batteries unleashed their fury. Energy weapons carved through Gentari shields like they were paper. Kinetic projectiles traveling at relativistic speeds punched through armor plating. Nuclear-tipped torpedoes found targets and detonated with miniature suns. The orbital defenses of the Gentari homeworld, formidable installations that had protected their civilization for centuries, lasted approximately 11 minutes. Wave after wave of human ordnance overwhelmed their shields, shattered their power generators, and reduced proud fortresses to expanding clouds of debris. Captain Park guided Relentless through the chaos with practiced skill. Her destroyer targeted a Gentari cruiser, one of dozens trying desperately to form a defensive line. Railgun batteries, focus fire. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. We'll want prisoners. Her weapons officer complied, and tungsten slugs hammered the cruiser's engine section. The enemy vessel spun out of control, venting atmosphere and leaking radiation. Park marked it for capture teams and moved to the next target. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships, operating with devastating efficiency, systematically destroyed Gentari military assets. The few enemy vessels that managed to return fire found themselves facing impossible odds. One Gentari destroyer might face 20 human frigates. One Gentari carrier confronted 100 human fighters. Captain Ramirez watched from steadfast as her air wing tore through Gentari formations. Alpha Squadron alone disabled 6 enemy escorts in the first 15 minutes. Her pilots flew with controlled aggression, their training evident in every maneuver. They weren't fighting angry or sloppy. They were fighting like professionals who had a job to do. The silence after battle felt heavier than the combat itself. Captain Park stood on Relentless's bridge, watching as human ships established control over the Gentari home system. Debris fields marked where orbital defenses had stood. Disabled enemy vessels drifted helpless, their crews either dead or awaiting capture. The once proud Gentari military had been shattered in less than half an hour. Her communications officer broke the quiet. Captain, Admiral Webb is broadcasting to all ships and to the Gentari homeworld. Patching through now. Webb's face appeared on every screen, his expression carved from granite. But he wasn't looking at his fleet. He was addressing the entire Gentari civilization, his words being translated and broadcast across their communication networks. people of the Jantari Collective. I am Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Earth Fleets. 27 days ago, your military attacked and destroyed our colony on New Haven. 3 million human civilians died in that attack. Men, women, and children who had never threatened your species, who sought only to live in peace on a world far from your borders. Webb paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Below on the Jantari homeworld, billions watched in shock and fear as the human fleet dominated their skies. Your leaders believed humanity was weak. They believed our peaceful nature meant we lacked the capability or will to defend ourselves. They were wrong. What you see above you is 500,000 warships, representing the full military might of our species. We brought them here to deliver a message that you will never forget. The Admiral's voice hardened. This is not conquest. We have no interest in your worlds or your people. But understand this clearly. Humanity will not tolerate attacks on our civilians. Every colony we establish is under our protection. Every human life matters. And anyone who harms our people will face consequences beyond their comprehension. Park watched as weapon systems across the fleet powered up, targeting military installations on the planet below. She knew Webb wasn't bluffing. If the Jantari leadership refused to surrender, human bombardment would reduce their military infrastructure to rubble. The Jantari response came within minutes. Their high command, watching helplessly as their fleet burned and their defenses collapsed, transmitted an unconditional surrender. It wasn't noble or defiant. It was the desperate plea of a civilization that had just learned the galaxy contained predators far more dangerous than themselves. Admiral, Webb accepted the surrender, but made his terms crystal clear. The Jantari would stand trial for war crimes. Their military would be reduced to defensive forces only. They would pay reparations to the families of New Haven's victims. And they would release every species they'd conquered or enslaved, granting them freedom and sovereignty. Within hours, human forces began landing on the Jantari homeworld. Not to conquer, but to enforce the terms of surrender and document evidence of their crimes. Sergeant Chun led his Marines through the corridors of the Jantari High Command headquarters, securing documents and databases that detailed decades of atrocities. What they found sickened even hardened veterans. The Jantari had destroyed 47 civilizations over the past century. Species that had barely achieved spaceflight, wiped out because the Jantari considered them inferior. Worlds bombarded from orbit, their populations exterminated or enslaved. New Haven had been just the latest in a long pattern of genocide. Chun transmitted the findings to Fleet Command, his voice tight with controlled rage. Sir, we've got records here of systematic extinction campaigns. They called it territorial sterilization. New Haven wasn't special to them. It was routine. Webb received the report aboard Indomitable, his worst suspicions confirmed. He forwarded the evidence to Earth immediately, knowing it would justify every decision he'd made. The Security Council had authorized force to avenge New Haven. Now they had evidence of something far larger, a genocidal empire that had been operating unchecked for generations. Captain Ramirez supervised the liberation of one of the Jantari's slave colonies, a world called Kelvar, where a peaceful aquatic species had been conquered 15 years earlier. Her Marines broke open labor camps and freed thousands of Kelvari who'd been forced to mine rare minerals for their oppressors. The Kelvari couldn't speak human languages, but their relief needed no translation. Families reunited. Children emerged from underground mines, seeing sunlight for the first time in their lives. Medical teams rushed to treat injuries and malnutrition. It was chaos, but it was joyful chaos, the sound of freedom being restored. Ramirez watched an elderly Kelvari approach her, moving on multiple legs with difficulty. The being couldn't speak, but it reached out one appendage and touched her hand gently. The gesture said everything. "Thank you. We thought we would die slaves. You gave us hope." She nodded, her throat tight. "You're free now. We'll make sure the Jantari never come back." Across the Jantari Empire, similar scenes played out as human task forces liberated world after world. Species that had been subjugated for decades suddenly found themselves free. Some were so broken by captivity, they didn't understand what was happening. Others celebrated immediately, tearing down monuments to their conquerors and reclaiming their worlds. The galactic community watched in stunned silence. Other spacefaring civilizations had known about the Jantari's aggression, but had lacked the military power to intervene. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy only recently, a newcomer that had seemed focused on peaceful exploration. Now the newcomer had deployed the largest military force in known history and dismantled a genocidal empire in less than a day. Diplomatic channels lit up with messages. Some species offered congratulations and support. Others expressed concern about humanity's obvious military capability. A few opportunists tried to ally themselves with Earth, hoping to benefit from association with such a powerful species. President Okonjo addressed them all from Geneva. Her message broadcast across multiple star systems. Humanity did not seek war. We expanded into space, hoping to find friends and partners. But we have learned that the galaxy is more dangerous than we hoped. We will not apologize for defending our people or for stopping genocide. We ask only that other species respect our sovereignty as we respect theirs. She paused, her expression firm. However, let this serve as notice to any who would threaten human colonies or target our civilians. We remember. We mourn, and we respond. New Haven's children deserved to grow up in peace. They deserved to live full lives on the world their parents built. That opportunity was stolen from them by an empire that valued conquest over coexistence. We have ensured that empire will never threaten anyone again. The message was clear. Humanity would be peaceful neighbors, but never victims. The 500,000 warships orbiting the Shantari homeworld made that promise tangible. Admiral Webb prepared to return the bulk of the fleet to human space. Garrison forces would remain to enforce the surrender terms and support the liberated species. War crimes trials would begin soon, with Shantari leadership facing justice for their atrocities. But the main objective had been achieved. New Haven had been avenged. Before departing, Webb ordered one final action. Task Force Memorial, composed of 300 ships, jumped to the Kepler system where New Haven had stood. They arrived to find a world scarred by bombardment. Its once beautiful landscape marked by craters and destruction. Captain Park commanded the task force, and her first order was to send recovery teams to the surface. They searched through ruins, looking for survivors and recovering the dead. The work was heartbreaking. Rescue specialists found only bodies, thousands upon thousands of them. Families who died together, trying to protect each other in their final moments. The teams worked with reverence, documenting everything and recovering personal effects. Data cores from destroyed buildings yielded final messages, recordings of people's last words to distant loved ones. A mother singing to her children as the bombardment began. A teacher trying to calm frightened students. Scientists transmitting their research data, hoping some good would come from their work, even if they died. Park read every report, forcing herself to witness the full scope of what had been lost. Her brother's body was found in the Botanical Research Center, his wife beside him. They'd been trying to save their plant samples when the plasma strike hit. Park ordered them buried together under alien soil, with a marker that bore both their names and a promise. Remembered. Avenged. Forever honored. Across the ruins of New Haven, similar markers appeared. 3 million graves for 3 million souls. The task force spent 2 weeks on the surface, ensuring every victim received dignity in death. They also began the work of rebuilding. establishing automated systems that would slowly restore the planet's damaged ecosystem. When the work was complete, Park stood at a memorial site overlooking what had been the colony's main city. Behind her, representatives from every ship in the task force stood in formation. They'd come to honor the dead and to make a promise to the living. "We will not forget," Park spoke into the silence. New Haven fell, but its people did not die in vain. Their deaths awakened humanity to the dangers of this galaxy. Their loss reminded us that peace requires strength, that kindness must be backed by the willingness to defend the innocent.